Hi everyone, my name is Stuart. I am an associate professor at the University of Wellington, and today Naheen and I will be talking about a recent study we completed, which looked at the vocabulary load of commercially published textbooks.
Hi, I'm Naheen, and we'll start by just looking at today's presentation outline. So first of all, we'll describe textbooks and how it's used in the current context of teaching, and also we'll look at how vocabulary is used in textbooks. We'll then outline our current situation and also detail the methods and results we use for this study before we present some pedagogical implications, and also hopefully have some time at the end for some questions and answers and time to discuss your own teaching situations. So let's start first of all with looking at textbooks and more specifically how important they are to learning. Richards has a look at textbooks as being the key component to the second language classroom. And in this way, he means that the textbook offers guidance to teachers in terms of what they're going to teach in a program of study, and also for learners in terms of routine and familiarity. Maris also agrees, saying that textbooks have a significant effect on language classes and teaching methodology. So upon closer look of the literature, we can see that there are many advantages of using a textbook in learning. So first of all, there's a lot of quality assurance. And so we have a lot of reputable publishers around the world who are publishing these textbooks and distributing them to all countries and universities across the globe. They're also written by experts, so all the authors have conducted research in these areas or have also a lot of experience in terms of writing resources and materials when it comes to language learning. We also have a lot of different editions of these textbooks, so they do get updated quite regularly, maybe too regularly sometimes. That means that they do have the current theoretical approaches and the latest teaching methodologies, which we can then use in our classrooms. They are also systematically planned, so we have a lot of units running from 1 to 10, 1 to 12 usually, and these are designed so they can progress with the student, and they are developed over a semester or a term, so then the students can also get more challenges as they work further through the book. There is also special attention given to vocabulary in many of these titles. So in terms of the vocab lists, or if they have specific vocabulary activities or even vocab boxes for each of the units, there is a special focus of using vocabulary in any of these commercial textbooks that you may use.
But as Naheen was saying, we've been told from the textbooks that the vocabulary is given special attention, but research has shown that this could be a myth and that vocabulary is actually not adequately covered in these textbooks. So there's been numerous studies that have looked at the vocabulary in textbooks. From the first 3 studies you can see at the top here, they looked at the vocabulary in the Success, Headway, and Pathfinder coursebook series, and they found out that the vocabulary well, these textbooks do not contain the first 2,000 words in English, the general service list. So that's quite worrying when the most frequent words in English are not covered in 3 coursebook series. Another study by Matsuoka and Hirsch in 2010 looked at the new Headway upper intermediate textbooks, and they found out that when you put the first 2,000 general service list and the academic words together, this only covered 95.5% of the vocabulary in this textbook. When you're thinking about an upper intermediate textbook, you would think it should be definitely a higher level than that. The most recent study is by O'Loughlin in 2012. He looked at the New English File textbook series, and he found out that the vocabulary covered was only the first 1,500 words in this textbook, which again is quite worrying. So when we think about all this together in conclusion, so in conclusion, when we're thinking about the vocabulary in textbooks, these results are showing that they're not covering the high frequency vocabulary, which is very worrying, and therefore supplementary materials are essential to bring into the classroom, so we are covering the high frequency vocabulary. This means that the textbook that you're using may not be covering the high frequency vocabulary, and therefore more analysis of commercially published textbooks is definitely needed to look at what vocabulary is covered in these textbooks.
So that led us to our current situation and our current study. And the research that we conducted used these two commercially published textbooks that you can see on your screen. So we used World English 2, which is A2 in the Common European Framework of Reference, or that would be your pre-intermediate. And Keynote 2 would be A2 B1 using the same reference, or pre-intermediate, intermediate. Each of these textbooks were used for one semester, so both textbooks were used over one academic year. They were used at a public university in Japan, and they were used specifically with first-year non-majors. The methods that we used for data processing involved scanning the two books. Unfortunately, there were no digital versions available for either of these books, so we had to scan page by page, which was quite time consuming, as you can imagine. We then took that data and then cleaned the text for analysis. So that meant looking for abbreviations, also looking at contractions and numbers, and making sure that that would all be readable with whatever program we used. We then ran these through some general vocab profilers. So you can see there are 4 listed on your screen. So the vocab profilers used were the range program, which was created by Heatley et al., and also the new word level checker, which has been recently updated by Mizumoto this year. And we also used 2 word list programs. So we looked more generally at the data with Nations BNC COCA 25,000 supplementary lists, and we looked at a specific Japanese context using the new JAST 8000.
So to give you more information about the word list that we used in the analysis, so as Naheen was saying, we used Nations BNC COCA 25,000 word list. So as the name suggests, there's 25,000 words. These are the most frequent words in general English. These are word families, and they're in order of frequency, and they're in order of each 25 1,000 base word lists. So this was our general word list that we used in the analysis. Because we're in Japan and we were looking at textbooks used in a Japan context, we wanted to use a specific word list for the context we're in, and we used the new JAST 8000. So as the name suggests, again, there's 8,000 words. These are lemmas, and this is ordered in frequency, and there are 8 different levels, so 8 1,000 base word lists. These word lists, these levels are depending on where you are in your level. I'll talk about that a bit later. But as I said, this word list is created for the Japan tertiary level. So let's go on to the results. I'll be focusing on the BNC COCA vocabulary load analysis first, and the first textbook is World English 2. So I've made 2 red lines here. So these are looking at the coverage between 95% and 98%. So 95% coverage is the minimum that should be covered, and then 98% would be the optimal level. So to understand the World English 2 textbook, students would need at least knowledge of the first 2,000 words, and they would need up to 4,000 words to reach the 98% comprehension level. As you can see from the table, there was no increase throughout the textbook. You would think throughout the textbook, there are 12 units in total. You would think there should be a slight increase throughout. Unfortunately, there isn't. And oppositely, there are some outliers. So in units 1, in units 4, for example, to reach 98%, students would need to know the first 5,000 words or the first 6,000 words. So it could get more difficult. Yep, so for the BNC COCA Keynote 2, again, through the 2 red bands on the table, you can see it starts from the 3,000. Students would need to know 3,000 words to understand 95%, and they'll need 5,000 words to understand 98%. Again, there's no increase throughout the textbook. There is an increase between World English 2 and Keynote 2, which follows their recommendation for the CEFR level, but again, there are some outliers as well. So if you look at Unit 1, for example, to reach 98%, they would need to know 8,000 words. And then it drops down again in Unit 2 to 5,000. So there are some massive outliers. So this basically means for students, each unit is going to be different. And one unit, for example, Unit 1 is going to be far more difficult than Unit 2, for example. So let's go on to the JAST 8000 word list. and looking at the results from World English 2. So as I was saying, just 8000 has different levels, and these have different meanings depending on what they are. So you've got level 1 and level 2, so this is junior high school. Then it goes, we're looking at level 4, for example. This is the start of the university to mid-university level. And then you've got all the way to level 8, which is basically near native, or they should be able to comprehend basically anything that they are given. So the level that we're looking at the moment is, they would want probably levels 4, 5 to 6, because they are just starting university, they're first year students, and they're non-English majors. So for this, we can see that to understand the World English 2 for Japanese non-English majors, they would need about 3,000 words to understand 95%, and they'll need 8,000, the level 8,000 to understand 98%, which is massive. There's a massive gap between that. As you can see, the coverage is all over the place. It goes from 3,000 all the way to 8,000, and some of them do not even reach 98%. So units 8, 9, 11, 12. So this means that for a Japanese student, World English 2 is going to be far too difficult. So looking at Keynote 2, so thinking about the levels as well, they would need to understand 3,000 words to understand 95%, and they need to understand 8,000 words to get 98%. Again, coverage is all over the place, just like World English 2, and all do not reach 98%. So they'll just be reaching the minimum comprehension level needed. But again, this is far too difficult for Japanese tertiary level students. So there basically needs to be near native to understand this, although they should be level 4 to 6. This textbook is reaching level 8.
So having a look at the pedagogical implications, we had a look at the results and thought that the numbers were appropriate levels as stated on the book. So the word levels that we had were appropriate to the Keynote and the World English pre-intermediate levels. However, we did note that they would be too lexically demanding for Japanese learners. And this was something that was commented on by just professors which were using these textbooks. And they would note that although the level was appropriate on the back for the classes that they were teaching, that perhaps in real life, in the classroom context, that it was too difficult for the students to understand. So in that sense, it's really important to consider the environment, and to also consider the context, and to think more specifically about our learner needs, especially when we are using the textbook. We have a few ideas of how we can do this.
Yes, of course, as I was saying, we need supplementary materials. Of course, the best course of action would be to create in-house text designed for the learners. Luckily, at the institution where these textbooks are being used, this is currently underway, and this is the best solution to getting rid of textbooks that may be too lexically demanding for the students. Of course, this is not always the way. You cannot just get rid of textbooks and create in-house text. It's a lot of work, trust me. So supplementary materials definitely are essential to help the learners understand the vocabulary in these textbooks. As we just shown, they are far too difficult for Japanese learners. So you can make a glossary, for example. You can give them a list of words, the word list, and you can give them access to and training in a dictionary so they can understand how to use a dictionary effectively. Don't just give them a dictionary, you need to actually train them in using a dictionary. Another way to help the learners, which is definitely helpful, would be to teach them vocabulary learning strategies. A few could be word cards. This has been shown to be one of the best vocabulary learning strategies. And again, guessing from context, this is another strategy that could help the learners to understand the vocabulary. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. I know all of you are working at an institution in Japan or maybe overseas, but maybe you're using in-house text that you've created yourself or someone else has created, or maybe you're using a textbook yourself. It'll be interesting to hear what your current situation is. If are you using a textbook, are you using in-house, and have you felt that it's too difficult or too easy for your learners? Thank you very much.
We're going to go back to Q&A, and you'll see us in real life now.
Yep.